one night we lived close to country with Mr. Mayor of Business. And they told us that they had some company coming from town. They were going to bring a radio with them for us to come down there that night and we could hear it. So we lived about, 1/8 of a mile, I guess, away from it, and we went down the road that night. Before we got there, we heard the radio. It was squeaking and squawking, and we never could tell much about what it sounded like because it's too much squeaking and squawking on it. They call it static. And they tried to fix it to make it sound right, but they put a wire down in the system and they struck a wire in the yard, and I don't think they ever got to doing what it ought to do because it was a battery set. We didn't have electricity. And that was the first radio I ever heard. I remember, I think the first TV that I ever saw, of course, that was after I was married, a long time after I was married. And I remember it was around close to the 50s, I guess. It was after the 50s before we ever got one of our own. I can tell you there's something about the Depression days if you want to know about them. Because we moved to Nashville in 1925. And my dad had been sick the year before that and couldn't work. So Peyton and Dallas, who was much younger than I, and I was 18. Jewel was 16, Peyton was 14. Dallas was still about 4 years younger than he was. Peyton and Dallas and the girls had done most of the field work that year. I hadn't done much of it that year because I worked at the telephone office that year, and I want to tell you a little bit about that. The first 2 weeks I got paid. They called it my learning, which you learned in 2 or 3 hours, but she called it that I was learning, the lady I worked for, and so I was paid $2 for the first 2 weeks I worked. And I'd leave home early in the morning, get back out sundown after night, and carried my lunch, drank water from a bucket, sitting on a bench close by all day long, just hot water you drank, you didn't have any ice. But I worked in the telephone office all summer. And that fall, then after school started, I worked Saturdays and Sundays. Then after Christmas, I worked on Sundays, so school was out. After that, we moved to Nashville when I got out of high school. And I went to Peabody that summer, and Jewel took a course at Western Union. She hadn't finished high school, but she qualified for the course at Western Union. And she became an operator. Later on, after I got through high school, got through teaching.
Okay, Dad, how about you? What are some of the things you remember, say maybe before you even went to school?
Well, before I started to school, I began to learn my ABCs from off of a flour sack, and learned to print maybe a portion of them. And that was some little bit before starting to school. And I have a very faint memory of my first day in school. And it did not much take place that day other than to assign me to the first grade and dismissed to go home.
What about after that? Do you remember your mom and dad, some of the first memories you had about them?
Well, I remember my mother being in the kitchen with me at the particular time. She was carrying on her work, but she was in the kitchen with me at the time that I was studying, learning these ABCs from the flour sack. And I reckon my dad was out at out on the farm somewhere. He had a very small farm, but he spent a right amount of time on the farm.
Did you ever?
Oh, very little farm equipment.
What kind of tractors did you have back then?
If you want to call an old mule a tractor, now he had a tractor, and he had to let the old mule rest occasionally because when he run out of fuel, why there wasn't no point in getting none for him right then.
Did you ever help your dad out working in the fields?
I helped work in the field a little bit when I was quite young, using a weeding hoe. chopping weeds, chopping down weeds and grass out of the cornfield.
Did you plant too many beans in one place?
Yes, I remember that. And I didn't know I was going to get caught up with it. And I don't even know whether I got reprimanded for it or not.
Well, tell me the circumstances about that.
Well, I dug this hole I thought deep enough to where them beans would never come up. And I've been putting 2 in a hill and not getting nowhere with a bucket full of beans hardly. And so I thought, well, I'm going to get rid of some of these beans. And I dug this big hole, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches deep maybe, and dumped a whole bunch of them in there. And I went back there sometime later, maybe a couple of weeks so, and come to find it find that it looked like nearly every one of them come up. And I don't think my dad ever did say a word to me about them beans, but I guess he'd been picking enough beans anyhow, and it didn't amount to a whole lot.
Didn't amount to a hill of beans, did it?
Didn't amount to a big-
You did that to get out of planting some beans.
I'd get out here and plant so many, I was making that job short, just getting rid of a whole lot of them in one hill.
Well, what about cutting wood? You ever help him out in the woods?
Oh yes, I helped him out in the woods. My dad used to cut down a beech tree, kind of late in the fall maybe, and would probably be somewhere like 18 inches or 2 foot thick through the stump. I don't know exactly, but anyway, and he'd work for ever so long. He'd sling that axe for ever so long, and take him quite of a time to get the tree cut down. But then after he cut it down, well, maybe I would trim off some of the small limbs on the tree where I could reach with my axe, and not get up on the tree, because if I had, I might have failed with that axe, and that might not have been too good. But I helped him quite a bit in cutting wood like that, because at that time we cooked with wood as well as heated with wood, and it took quite a little bit to run through the winter.
What about electricity?
Oh, there was no electricity at that time out there. I don't know whether they even had any in Nashville at that time or not. I too little remember whether they even had electricity in Nashville.
Dad never had electricity.
Huh?
Your mother and dad never did have electricity.
No. My mother and dad never had electricity. They had the coal oil lamps and wood stoves, or coal stoves. They did burn coal a right smart.
Well, tell me, after you started school, did you learn anything? You learn any poems?
Well, now that learning a poem was kind of on up in my school years. I don't know what grade.
He knows one we all want to say.
I remember reading a poem and didn't memorize it like I should have, but I remembered part of it. And about a fellow by the name of Bill Jones. And I think maybe he was a blacksmith. But anyhow, we used to think of old Bill Jones being a blacksmith. But this Bill Jones had a mule. The poem started out like this. Old Bill Jones had a kicking mule. He could not cure the golden fool. He would kick all night and kick all day and hoist his heels while eating hay. Kick at everything in his reach, and when he saw nothing there, he would kick away at the empty air. But old Bill Jones was sure the wisest curse. He never would race in a nasty fuss, nor trade the mule off to any innocent, for he knew what conservation meant. And old Bill Jones rigged up a contraption, and as this mule kicked to and fro, he strode wild electric juice into batteries of further use. house and barn was lighted well, with nothing, with enough left to sell. An old Bill, I got off. I'm gonna have to try to say it over and
Well, it lighted the house and barn.
was lighted well, with current left enough to sell, and no one need to go without. Oh my goodness! Who lived within 10 miles about. In fact, Bill Jones grew rich and fat. He had caught the secret of the hour of punishing the wasted power. If some genie of inventive mind would study hard and method fine to harness rope and tie the men who waste their time in kicking wind, they should be turning wheels instead and moving this old world ahead. He would have enduring fame, and all the world would praise his name.
Very good, very good.
That's all I could give you about.
That's pretty
There was
good.
a whole lot more to it. He stretched the fence more than a mile, and I don't know what all. I wish I could have
That's
memorized it.
Very good, very good, very good.
Old Bill Jones is kicking mule.
Kicking mule.
That Bill Jones, what was it? Kicking mule was a kicking fool or something like that.
He couldn't cure the golden
Kicked all night and kicked all day.
That's Goosey that owned that little old piece of, what do you want to call it? I don't reckon she'd have cared. If I'd have cared, that company home with me and just kept it, but who could keep it?
Kicked all night, kicked all day, and hossed his heels while eating.
Yeah, kick at everything in his reach. When he saw nothing there, just kick away at the empty air. Old Bill Jones, you still taking it?
Yeah.
Old Bill Jones was sure the wisest cuz. He never was raised in a nasty fuss, or trade the mule off to any cent, or he knew what conservation meant.
Okay, Mom, what are some of the things you remember?
Well, just to give you a little background, my mom and dad went to school at Pleasantview together when Mom was a teenager. And that's when they became sweethearts. And they didn't live there till Mama she got married. She moved to Nashville before they got married, but some of the interesting things I might tell you about it then was that they lived down there on the corner in Pleasantview, and Uncle John was about 12 years old at that time. Mom was about 16. And Uncle John would go downtown, he'd see Papa downtown, he'd run back to the house right fast as he could and say, Mama Lou, Mama Lou, Luster's all downtown. I saw Luster downtown. He was always teasing her, you know. And he told me a long time after that when Papa came to see Mama that his hair was so slicked down that if a fly lit on his head, it would slip up and break his neck. That amused me. But when she moved to Nashville, she taught music for a little while, and she had a hard time going to Papa, and he had a hard time getting up there to see her because he had to go in the horse and buggy. And they kind of objected to her going with him because they were afraid she'd get married to him. But she did. She slipped off one day and she went to teach her music, and she went over to North Nashville to teach music. She told a friend of hers to tell her mother that later on the day that she wouldn't be back home, she's going to get married. But the friend didn't wait till she got hardly out of sight before she went to tell Grandma that Mama had gone. She was going to get married. So Grandma burst out crying. Uncle John came in. Uncle John came in and he saw Grandma crying. He wondered what in the world she was crying about. And Grandma said, Mama Lou got married. He said, got married? Said, Lord have mercy, I thought she must be dead the way you involved it. He said, she just got married. He just laughed about it. Didn't amuse her very much. But Papa and Mama came back to the country and we lived down here close to Pleasantview. That's where they lived with Grandma and Grandpa for just a little while, and then they moved into a building that was built for a granary. I could describe it, it would take too much time. But that's where 4 of us children were born. I was born there, Bill Jewell was born there, Mary Alice, Peyton was born there, and Mary Alice. But I'll tell you something interesting about Peyton. When he was born, Papa was real proud of his 2 girls, but he was still born a boy. And when Peyton was born, he was born in March. And he was at the house when the birth took place. I was old enough that I remember I was about 4 years old. But he went back to the barn and So when the men folks came home from the barn, they told it on Papa that he came back over to the barn, he climbed up on top of the barn and straddled the top of the barn and began beating his fist up and down the barn, hollering, "It's a boy, it's a boy, it's a boy." Because I'm sure he didn't do that, but they made out like he did. He was real proud of all his children, though. And we lived there between Grandma and Cardew and Aunt Charlotte and Uncle Walter Phelps. Now, Aunt Charlotte was my grandmother's sister, so she was my great aunt. She had a bunch of children, Mama had a bunch of children. We all played together and had real good times. And my grandma and Mama and Aunt Charlotte always shared the work. They always worked together in canning, worked together picking geese, worked together quilting, worked together sewing, whatever came to hand. They were all gathered one of the other houses and they worked together. We children always had a hand doing something while they were working too. But when we were little, they didn't have any trouble out of us. We didn't have a lot of toys, but we made our own fun. Grandma would let us help her pick the geese. She'd hold the geese and we'd pluck the little down off of the stomachs. And I guess children today wouldn't know what it was to pick geese. But she saved all those feathers and made feather beds out of them. And Aunt Charlotte was quite a seamstress. My mother used to go down to her house to do a lot of the sewing because Aunt Charlotte knew a little more about sewing than she did. And they'd give us the scraps and we'd sit around the front porch then in the summertime and we'd make dog clothes while they were making other kind of clothes. And we had a lot of games that we played then. We children would be playing games through the week, but on Sundays we gathered there again for games that the grown-ups would join in the games with us. Uncle Walter, Uncle Turner Walker, and there's Mr. Charlie Harris and Mr. Charlie Ford, and not Charlie Ford, let's see, I can't think of his name, Jim Ford's daddy. Anyway, these men would get out there and play with us, and we had one game we called Stealing Brick. We line up a row of tobacco sticks up and down the middle of the yard, and we have a pile of brick on one side. It had to be brick or rock. If we didn't have enough brick, we'd make up the balance of the rock. We'd have it on one side about several feet back, and on the other side have another pile on the other side. We divide up into two teams. We always try to get some of these men on our side, you know, when we divide up in teams, because we want them to be good runners. We'd all have to toe the line of these sticks up and down there, and each one had a partner to watch, not let him come across the line. If you got him across the line and you could tag him before he got to the rock pile, then you got him to sit on the rock pile. If you didn't tag him, he got the rock pile before you could tag him, he got to carry back one of your rock, a brick. And so each one was trying to get the other fellow's brick. But if one got on the rock pile, and then somebody on his side felt sorry for him, they'd try to slip across and saving him to carry him back on his side. If they got to him before you touched him, he could carry him back, but you couldn't carry back a brick and a person at the same time. We had quite a lot of fun just playing stealing brick all Sunday afternoons. Another game we had was Andy Over, and we had a pretty good sized house there, Uncle Walter's. It was 2-story, and slanted roof on both sides. We had a ball, which had teams on each side of the house. One would holler Andy and the other would holler Over, so we'd throw the ball over to them. If they caught the ball, they could run around the house and see if they could hit us with a ball. If they hit one of them with a ball, they had to go to their side. So that's the way that game worked. And we had a game called Savior. Hi, darling. Come on in, sweet. Come on in. And when we got a little bit older, Corinne was always the leader in most of our games. And she would teach school. She was a teacher. She would tell us how to run this and run that. And we had weddings and we had funerals and different things of that sort. One funny thing might interest you, and I hope Julie don't care if I tell you. Well, we used to have, Mama and Charlotte and Mama always raised chickens in the spring, so if any of the little chickens died, we'd have a funeral. We'd fix the little chicken up in the dead chicken in a little box of some sort, and dig a grave for it, and put flowers on its grave, and we'd have a preacher, and we'd have mourners, and we'd cry with the chicken. And so one day we looked around and didn't find chickens to bury because they weren't dead that day. And my grandmother was away that day, and Jewel went over to her house, and she had a hen that had a bunch of chickens, and all of them were white except one, it was a little black chicken. So Jewel just caught the little black chicken around his neck, so we killed it. And we had a funeral. So Grandma came home that afternoon, and she wondered what became her little black chicken. We had to tell her that Jewel killed it and we buried it. She didn't whip any out, so she should have, I guess. But we had funny things that happened. And Jewel and Cullen were always getting into something together. They kind of teamed up together. One day Mama killed a mouse. She caught it in a trap, and she was taking it out of the trap. And Jewel and Cullen were in there. They said, give that mouse to us. So she let them have it. She didn't know what they were going to do with it. They ran out behind the house, and they skinned that mouse and came back in the house and told her to cook it for dinner. Lou and I always teamed up together. If anybody got married, well, Lou and I got married. We were just near the same age. We were all cousins. We just had a lot of fun. We used to have, we'd have what we call baptizings. We'd rake up a lot of leaves and a great big pile of them. We'd call it baptizing. We'd souse one of them down the leaves. We'd have humps in the leaves, and they'd jump out at us and hold boo and scare us, and we'd all run. And just different things we'd do. Also, my two cousins, Earl and Todd Party, lived at my grandmother's, and they were left orphans when they were little, so they were living there when Papa and Mama married. And they were just a little older than I was, and they joined in some of our games too, because we'd have what we call vaultable shows, and they'd fix them a pole up between two little sapling trees we lived in the woods, and they'd get up there and do acting on those poles, and Earl could hang himself up there by his toes and act that little bit, and we thought that was something. He was a showman. He later joined the Navy in World War I, and went off to the Navy, and he never did come back to live with Grandpa anymore. He got married, he lived in Detroit after he came out of the Navy. So that was those girls, all both gone now. But we lived in the Grainger for about, well, till 4 of us was born. Then we moved up there to a house near Pleasant View, and we lived there till I got through high school. And then we moved to Nashville right after I was through high school, and that's during the Depression days from about 25 to 30 something. And we moved to Nashville in 25, and my daddy was in ill health, and during the time he was so sick, the kids had to raise the crop the last year we were in the country. We went to Nashville, and he got a little bit better, so he got a job 2 or 3 different places. He worked at a coffee candy company once, and then he worked at Carter's shoe factory for a little while. And I never will forget him coming home one time and telling my mother that he wanted her to put a little more in his lunch the next day, because he said that one of the men had dropped potato peelings in his lunch and he wanted to divide with him. We might not have had much, but we had more than a lot of other people had, because a lot of people had to go to soup lines, and a lot of people just didn't have anything hard at all. We never went hungry. But the children helped to keep things going. Peyton and Dallas, and they used to sell papers on the street, and used to caddy at Shelby Park, and when they weren't, big enough to do other things. One time Peyton was going to sell papers, Mama wanted him to wash his face. It was so dirty, but everybody burned coal those days, and you get black with coal soot. The air was filled with it. He didn't want to wash his face. He said you sold more papers when you were dirty. But the kids would get up real early and take off on those streetcars before daylight to be out to Shelby Park, in order to be out there when those early golfers on the course, and they'd golf and make a little money to come home. And they also would pass out surplus all over the neighborhood from the grocery stores. But I guess they did pretty good to do what they've done now. Some of them retired, and it was a hard time though during the Depression. And I just, when my daddy had worked part of the time, I'd like to tell you more about my daddy, because he was such a lover of children. While he lived in West Nashville, all the children up down the street loved him. He'd start down the street to go to the park on Sunday afternoon and say, "Come on, kids," and they'd follow him just like somebody followed the Peter Pied Piper. And he'd gather the children from the top of the hill on 31st all the way down, go to Centennial Park and spend the afternoon, come back. He was in his 7th heaven because he left the children to go with him. When we were in the country, he went squirrel hunting or possum hunting. He always wanted somebody to go with him. I've been with him many times. We'd go out early in the morning before anybody else would hardly be up. Go to the woods and be in the fall of the year when the leaves were dry and rustling. He'd want me to walk just real quiet and still, not making much noise. But we'd listen for the squirrels to crack the nuts up in the trees, and he'd find the squirrel and he'd want me to always stay behind him. And he'd want me to get in front of him, afraid a gun might go off or something. And then he'd keep me behind him. He'd shoot that squirrel, then we'd probably go back home. He'd clean the squirrel, dress it, and Mama had a fried squirrel for breakfast. But you can't beat that these days, can you? He goes possum hunting at night. I've gone with him possum hunting many a time. And we'd carry a lantern and we'd hold that lantern up and shine it up the persimmon tree. That's where you find the possums, was in the persimmon tree. They go there and eat persimmons. And you shine that up there, and pretty soon you find that old possum's eyes shining. You shake him out of the tree, and the dogs would catch him, or you get him down somewhere or other. But a possum has a way of playing dead, you know. They kill you right quick if you don't. You think they're dead, and they lying still. First thing you know, they jump up and run off. A lot of people wouldn't eat possums today, but I've eaten them, and they're pretty good then. Just stop for a little while and get them out of breath.
What did your dad do for a living, Mom?
Well, when he first married, he was farming with his daddy. Grandpa had a farm, and so he had him. But he wasn't, it's hard to for a farm because he had a log roll over and interruption. That's the reason my grandparents didn't want my mother to marry him. And he asked Grandpa to raise his salary from 50 cents to 75 cents a day, which I think Grandpa wasn't too anxious to do. But he felt like he ought to get 75 cents a day instead of 50 cents a day then. But Grandpa soon put him in a little store for Grandpa to run because he wasn't hard able to work on the farm. And in this store I have some fond memories of staying down there sometime because when he would go to Nashville to get supplies, he always